Nobody on the general passage had seen anything like it before. The object was small, barely the size of a storage crate, spinning end over end through the dark emptiness between stars. It had no beacon, no signal, no identification markings that matched any known species in the Galactic Union registry. Debris? Commander Duel asked from his seat, his gray fur bristling slightly as he studied the sensor readout. No, sir, the navigation officer replied. There's a life sign inside. That changed everything. Duel ordered the object brought into the cargo bay under full security protocols. 12 armed crew members stood in a wide circle as the mechanical arms lowered the battered metal pod onto the deck. It was ugly. Rough welded seams ran along its surface. Scorch marks covered one side. Whoever had built this thing had not built it for comfort. They had built it to survive. Surgeon Delegate Poyu arrived within minutes, her 4 thin arms already pulling on sterile gloves as she walked. She was Mirati, tall and pale blue, with a face that most species found calming. That was useful in her work. Frightened patients needed calm hands. The pod's hatch did not open easily. It took 2 engineers and a cutting tool to break the seal. Inside, curled on her side in a space barely large enough for her body, was a female of a species no one on the ship recognized. She had brown skin, dark hair matted with sweat, and she was breathing. Poya knelt beside her and began scanning. The readings made her stop. She ran the scan again, then a third time. Get her to the medical bay, Poyu said quietly. Now, they moved the woman on a stretcher. She did not wake during the transfer. Poya worked quickly, connecting monitors, running fluid lines, and checking every system in the stranger's body. The results kept coming back wrong. Not wrong as in broken. Wrong as in impossible. The woman's bones were dense. Far denser than any species Poya had treated in her 40 years of medicine. Her muscles were layered, thick, packed tight beneath her skin in a way that suggested she had evolved under crushing physical force. Her immune system was not just active. It was aggressive. White blood cells were already attacking microscopic contaminants from the air before Poyu could even apply sterilization. This body was not fragile. This body was a fortress. Poyu called Duel to the medical bay. He came alone, standing just inside the door with his arms crossed. What are we dealing with? He asked. Poyu hesitated. She had treated over 300 species in her career. She had seen predator biology. She had seen prey biology. She had seen everything in between. But she had never seen anything like this. This creature, Poyu said carefully, is built for survival in conditions that would kill most species in the Union within hours. Her gravity tolerance alone suggests she comes from a world with a pull strong enough to flatten a Mirati skeleton. Her cellular repair rate is extraordinary. She is healing micro-damage from the pod's radiation exposure faster than I can measure it. Duel stared at the woman on the bed. She looked so ordinary lying there. Small compared to him. Soft skin. Closed eyes. Steady breathing. Is she dangerous? He asked. Her biology is, Poya said. Whether she is, I cannot say yet. Duel posted 4 guards outside the medical bay and 2 inside. He did not sleep well that night. Nobody on the ship did. The woman woke 16 hours later. Poya was alone with her when it happened. The monitors chimed softly and the woman's eyes opened. They were dark brown, warm, and completely alert. There was no confusion in them. No panique. She looked around the room slowly, taking in the equipment, the walls, the alien doctor standing 3 steps away with all 4 hands frozen in midair. Then she sat up. Poyu flinched. The movement was smooth and controlled, but the bed frame groaned under the shift of weight. The woman looked down at her own hands, flexed her fingers, and then looked at Poyu. Hello, she said. The word meant nothing to Poyu at first. The ship's translation system caught it half a second later and converted it. A greeting. Simple. Friendly. Poyu swallowed and replied in Union Standard. The system translated it back. You are safe. You are aboard a Galactic Union patrol vessel. Can you tell me your name? The woman considered this for a moment. Not with fear. With patience, as if she was deciding how much to share with a stranger. Rena, she said. Rena Hollis. Rena, Poyu repeated. Can you tell me what happened to your ship? Reactor failure, Rena said simply. I had about 4 minutes to get to the pod before the whole thing came apart. 4 minutes. Poyu thought about what that meant. 4 minutes to assess a fatal emergency. Reach an escape pod, seal it, and launch. Most species Poyu knew would have frozen in panic. This woman said it the way someone might describe a minor inconvenience. Where did you come from? Poyu asked. Rena looked at her for a long moment. Something shifted behind those brown eyes. Not suspicion exactly. More like caution. Far away, Rena said softly. Very far from here. She did not say more, and Poyu did not push. There would be time for questions later. When Poyu reported to Duel that evening, she kept her voice low. She is cooperative. Polite. Calm. Almost too calm. Too calm for what? Duel asked. Too calm for someone who should be dead, Poyu said. Commander, I have treated soldiers who survived less than what this woman went through. They screamed. They shook. They wept. This woman sat up, said hello, and asked if there was water. Duel said nothing for a long time. Find out where she came from, he said finally. I want to know what kind of world makes something like her. 3 days passed, and Rena Hollis did not cause a single problem. She stayed in the medical bay without complaint. She ate whatever food the crew brought her. She slept when the lights dimmed and woke when they brightened. She answered every question Poyu asked with patience and honesty, and she never raised her voice once. That was what scared Poyu the most. Every morning, the surgeon delegate ran new scans. Every morning, the results got worse. Not worse for Rena. Worse for Poyu's understanding of what was possible, that Rena's body carried antibodies for diseases that had never been cataloged in Union medical archives. Her blood fought infections the ship's sterilization systems had already killed, as if her immune system did not trust anything to be truly safe. There were old fractures in her ribs and left forearm, healed perfectly, layered with new bone that was stronger than the original. She had been broken before. Her body had simply fixed itself and moved on. Her cardiovascular system was built for endurance. Her heart pumped blood with a pressure that would have burst the veins of a Mirati. Her lungs processed oxygen with brutal efficiency, pulling every molecule from each breath as if the air itself might run out at any moment. What is your gravity like? Poyu asked during one of their sessions. On your world. Rena thought about it. About 9.8 meters per second squared, she said casually. Poyu entered the number into her console. The system flagged it immediately. That pull was nearly 10 times the gravity on Mirith. It was 6 times the Union average. Species that evolved under such force were classified as heavy gravity organisms, and most of them were simple creatures. Bugs, worms, thick, slow animals that crawled along the ground. None of them had ever developed intelligence. Until now. How do you move so easily? Poyu asked, unable to hide her disbelief. Rena shrugged. I grew up in it. You do not really notice the weight when it is all you have ever known. Poyu stared at her. This woman could, in theory, lift objects that would require machinery on most Union worlds. She could run faster and longer than nearly any species aboard the Gentle Passage. She could fall from a height that would kill a Fairshire soldier and probably walk away with a bruise. And she sat there cross-legged on the medical bed, picking at a bowl of bland nutrient paste, as if none of that mattered. Does the food taste bad? Poyu asked. Rena smiled. It was a small smile, gentle and a little embarrassed. It is fine. I have eaten worse. Poyu did not want to know what worse meant. Meanwhile, on the lower deck, Analyst Bree was tearing apart the escape pod. Bree was uni, small and round with enormous dark eyes that could process visual data faster than most scanners. She was young for a data specialist, barely into her 3rd decade, but she had a gift for finding patterns in broken things. And the pod was very broken. The navigation computer was cracked. Half the memory chips were fried from the reactor explosion. But Bree was patient. She pulled data fragment by fragment, cleaning each piece, rebuilding the file structure bit by bit like someone assembling a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. After 2 days, she had a partial coordinate SET that IT was not complete. 3 of the 6 navigational values were corrupted beyond recovery. But the remaining 3 were enough to narrow the origin point down to a small cluster of systems near the outer rim, a region that the Union had surveyed centuries ago and then abandoned. Bree pulled the old survey records. Most of the systems in that cluster were empty. Dead rocks orbiting dim stars. Nothing worth colonizing. Nothing worth visiting, but one system had a flag on it, a bright red flag. The planet was the 3rd from its star. It was a mid-sized rocky world with a single large moon. The survey probe had spent only 47 minutes in orbit before its automated systems triggered a withdrawal. The data it collected in those 47 minutes was enough to earn the planet the highest danger classification the Galactic Union had ever assigned. Category 9. Death World. Bree read the probe's summary with her wide eyes getting wider. Extreme axial tilt causing violent seasonal shifts. Active tectonic plates producing constant earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. A magnetic field that barely deflected solar radiation. An atmosphere loaded with a corrosive gas the probe identified as oxygen. Oceans covering 70% of the surface, filled with predatory life forms. Land masses dominated by aggressive fauna, ranging from microscopic parasites to massive apex predators. The probe's final note was simple and blunt. No intelligent life expected to develop. Planet unsuitable for contact. Quarantine recommended. That report was written 312 years ago. Bree sat very still in her chair. She looked at the data from a pod. She looked at the data from the probe. The coordinates overlapped. She picked up her communicator with shaking hands. Commander Duel? Analyst Bree. I need to speak with you and Surgeon Delegate Poyu immediately. I know where she came from. She paused. And sir, you're going to want to sit down for this. 20 minutes later, Bree stood in Duel's office with the old survey file displayed on the wall screen. Poyu stood beside her, all 4 arms pressed tight against her sides. Duel sat behind his desk, his gray fur completely flat, which for a Fairshire meant something close to shock. Nobody spoke for a long time. The planet on the screen was blue and green and white, wrapped in swirling clouds and lit by a yellow star. It looked beautiful from orbit. It looked peaceful. The data beneath the image told a different story. She came from that. Duel finally whispered. Bree nodded. Yes, sir. She came from that. Duel did not sleep that night. He sat in his office with the old survey file open on the screen and read every line of the probe's report 4 times. Each time, it got worse. The planet had seasons that swung between extreme heat and extreme cold because its axis was tilted. Entire regions of the surface would freeze solid for months, then thaw into floods. The tectonic plates shifted constantly, splitting the ground open, pushing mountains up from nothing, and triggering waves in the ocean tall enough to swallow coastal cities. The atmosphere was a mix of nitrogen and oxygen, and the oxygen was not just present. It was hungry. It made things burn. Fire was not rare on this world. Fire was a feature. And then there was the life. The probe had detected millions of distinct species in its 47 minutes of scanning. Medial predators filled every space. The oceans had creatures with rows of teeth that could bite through metal. The land had animals that hunted in organized groups, communicating with sounds and body language, setting traps, flanking their prey. Even the smallest organisms were dangerous. The probe had detected bacteria and viruses so aggressive that they could break down organic tissue in hours. This was not a planet. This was a war zone, and Rena Hollis had grown up on it. Duel called a meeting the next morning. Poyu, Bree, and the ship's senior staff gathered in the briefing room. Bree displayed the probe data on the main screen, and for several minutes, nobody spoke. Category 9, Duel said finally. There are only 11 planets in the entire Union database rated Category 9. None of them have produced intelligent life. None of them have ever been contacted. We do not go to Category 9 worlds. We do not send probes back to Category 9 worlds. We mark them on the charts, and we stay away. He pointed at the screen, and somehow, this one billed a woman who says hello when she wakes up in a stranger's hospital. Poyu stepped forward. Her biology now makes complete sense. Every feature I could not explain matches these conditions. The bone density is from the gravity. The immune system is from the pathogens. The muscle structure, the healing speed, the cardiovascular endurance, all of it is a response to growing up on a world that is actively trying to kill everything on it. She is a predator, said the chief of security, a nervous Tilek with too many eyes. She is a survivor, Poyu corrected gently. There is a difference. Duel made his decision. He would ask Rena directly. He went to the medical bay alone. The guards outside shifted uncomfortably as he passed. Inside, Rena was sitting on the edge of her bed, braiding her hair with quick, practiced fingers. She looked up when he entered and gave him a small nod. Commander, she said. You look tired. I am, he admitted. He pulled a chair across from her and sat down. Rena, we have found the coordinates from your pod. We know where you launched from. Something in her expression changed. Not fear. Something quieter than that. Acceptance, maybe. We matched your origin to a planet in our database. Duel continued. It was surveyed 300 years ago. The probe classified it as a Category 9 death world, the highest danger rating we have. The report said no intelligent life could develop there. Rena was quiet for a moment. Then, very softly, she laughed. It was not a mocking laugh. It was tired and sad and a little bit fond, the way someone might laugh at an old memory. They were not entirely wrong, she said. It is a hard place. What do you call it? Duel asked. Earth. The words sat in the air between them. Duel pulled up the probe images on a portable display and turned it toward her. The screen showed the planet from orbit, bright and beautiful. It showed the surface scans. Storms the size of continents. Volcanic chains stretching across entire landmasses. Oceans dark and deep and full of things with teeth. Rena looked at each image carefully. Her face did not show horror or shame. It showed something Duel had not expected. She looked homesick. That is the Pacific, she said, touching the screen gently where a vast blue ocean filled the frame. I grew up near it. You could hear the waves from my grandmother's house. The probe recorded predators in that ocean over 15 meters long, Duel said. Whales, Rena said, and she smiled. They sing. If you are underwater, you can hear them from miles away. It is the most beautiful sound. Duel stared at her. A creature over 15 meters long, living in a death world ocean, and this woman called its sounds beautiful. Were you not afraid? He asked. Rena considered the question seriously. Of whales? No, they are gentle, mostly. There are things in the ocean to be afraid of, sure. Sharks, jellyfish, currents that can pull you under. But you learn to respect them. You learn the rules. Every part of Earth has rules, and if you learn them, you can live there. And if you do not learn them, Rena's smile faded. Then you do not live very long. Duel sat back in his chair. He thought about his own homeworld. Gentle hills, slow rivers, soft rain that fell in predictable patterns. He had never once in his entire life worried about being eaten. I need to report this to Union headquarters, he said. A spacefaring species from Category 9 world. This has never happened before. I understand, Rena said. They will send someone important. I figure they would. Are you worried? Rena looked at him with those steady brown eyes. Commander, I grew up swimming in an ocean full of sharks. I think I can handle a diplomat. Duel, despite everything, almost smiled. The rumor spread through the gentle passage the way fire moves through dry grass. By the second day after Bree's discovery, every crew member on the ship knew what Rena was and where she had come from, out a Death Worlder. A real one, walking their halls, breathing their air, eating in their mess hall. Reactions were split down the middle. Half the crew wanted Rena locked in a sealed room with armed guards on every side. They whispered in the corridors about what a creature from a Category 9 world could do if she decided to be violent. They talked about her bone density, her muscle mass, the fact that she could probably tear a bulkhead door off its frame with her bare hands if she wanted to. The chief of security filed 3 separate requests for heavier weapons to be distributed to the guard teams. The other half was curious. They lingered near the medical bay, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. They asked Poyu endless questions. What does she eat? Does she really heal that fast? Is it true her world has animals that breathe fire? No, Poyu said to that last one. They do not breathe fire. They have enough fire already. Rena noticed all of it. She was not stupid, and she was not blind. She could see the way crew members pressed themselves against a far wall when she walked to the washroom and back. She could see the way the guards gripped their weapons a little tighter every time she moved too quickly. She could hear the conversations that stopped the moment she entered a room. She did not get angry. She did not complain. She simply began being very, very careful. When she walked slowly. When she reached for something, she reached gently. When she spoke, she kept her voice soft and steady. Every movement she made was deliberate, controlled, measured, as if she was constantly aware that she was the most physically powerful being on the ship and was doing everything she could to make sure nobody felt threatened by that fact. Poyu watched this with growing fascination. One afternoon, Poyu saw Rena in the corridor outside the medical bay. A young Uni technician, one of Bree's assistants, was struggling with a heavy equipment case. The case was designed to be moved by 2 people or a small hover cart, and the technician had neither. He was dragging it across the floor, his thin arms shaking, his wide dark eyes full of frustration. Rena stopped. She looked at the technician. She looked at the case. Then she crouched down beside him and said, "Can I help?" The technician froze. His eyes went even wider, which Poyu would not have thought possible. He looked at Rena the way a small animal looks at something very large that has just spoken to it. "I'm stronger than I look," Rena said gently. "Where does this need to go?" The technician pointed down the hall. Rena picked up the case with one hand. She did not strain. She did not grunt. She lifted it the way someone might lift a cup of water, and she carried it to the door the technician had pointed at and set it down without a sound. "There you go," she said, and she smiled at him before walking away. The technician stood in the corridor for a full minute, motionless, before he remembered how to breathe. Tea kept happening in the mess hall. A fair-sure cook dropped a tray of heated containers. Rena caught 2 of them before they hit the floor, moving so fast that the cook did not even see her hands until the containers were already safe on the table. She handed them back without a word and went back to her seat that a maintenance hatch on deck 4 was sealed shut by a jammed locking mechanism. 2 engineers had been working on it for an hour with tools. Rena walked past, asked what the problem was, and twisted the handle until the mechanism broke free. She did it carefully, slowly, with just enough force and no more. "Thank you," one of the engineers said, his voice shaking slightly. "No problem," Rena said. She wiped her hands on her pants and kept walking. Poyu began keeping notes. Not medical notes. Personal ones. "She modifies her behavior constantly," Poyu wrote. "She is aware of the strength difference between herself and every other person on this ship, and she adjusts for it in every single interaction. She opens doors slowly. She takes object from people with exaggerated gentleness. She lowers herself to the eye level of shorter species before speaking to them. This is not instinct. This is training. This is someone who has spent her entire life learning how to be careful with things more fragile than herself." Poyu found Rena in the observation lounge that evening, sitting alone in front of the wide window, watching the stars. "You are very patient with them," Poyu said, sitting down nearby. Rena did not look away from the window. "They're scared. I understand that. I am new and strange, and apparently my planet is a horror story to everyone out here. Does it bother you?" "The fear? A little," Rena admitted. "But I would rather they be cautious than afraid. Caution is smart. Fear makes people do foolish things." "You are being very gentle with them," Poyu said. Rena finally turned to look at her. Her brown eyes were warm but tired. "On Earth, we have a saying, gentle does not mean weak. I am strong. I know that. But strength without kindness is just violence. And I have had enough violence for one lifetime." Poyu sat with that for a long time. "The ambassador arrives tomorrow," Poyu said quietly. Rena nodded. "I figured. She will have harder questions than mine." Rena looked back at the stars. "That is fine. I have lived through harder things than questions." Ambassador Lorith's shuttle docked with the gentle passage at exactly the scheduled time. Not a minute early. Not a minute late. That told Duel everything he needed to know about the kind of person he was dealing with. Precise. Controlled. Political. Lorith was tech-savvy, which meant she was covered in fine green scales that caught the light when she moved. She was shorter than Duel, but carried herself as if she were the tallest person in every room. Her eyes were golden and unblinking, and when she spoke, every word sounded like it had been chosen from a list of 1,000 options and found to be the only correct one as she brought 2 aides and a security officer. She did not bring a translator. Her union standard was flawless. "Show me the creature," was the first thing she said. Duel did not correct her word choice. He led her to the conference room, where Rena was already waiting. Hoyu stood in the corner, silent, watching. Rena sat at the table with her hands folded in front of her. She had asked for clean clothes that morning, and the crew had given her a simple gray uniform that almost fit. Her dark hair was pulled back. Her face was calm. Lorith entered, sat across from her, and studied her for a full 30 seconds before speaking. "I am Ambassador Lorith of the Galactic Union Diplomatic Corps. I have been sent to assess whether your species represents a threat to Union stability. I will be asking you direct questions, and I expect direct answers. Do you understand?" "Yes," Rena said. "Good. Tell me about your world's military capabilities." Rena did not flinch. "Earth has multiple nations, each with their own military forces. We have weapons that range from handheld firearms to nuclear devices capable of destroying entire cities." The room went very still. Lorith's golden eyes did not blink. "You have weapons that can destroy cities," she repeated. "Yes. And you have used them?" "Twice," Rena said. "A long time ago. It is one of the worst things we have ever done. Most of us agree on that." "Most," Lorith noted. "Not all. No, not all. Humans do not agree on everything. We probably never will." Lorith made a small note on her tablet. "What is your population?" "When I left, roughly 8 billion. 8 billion. On a Category 9 death world." Lorith's stylus paused for just a fraction of a second before she continued writing. "Tell me about your conflicts. Your wars." Rena took a slow breath. "We have fought wars for as long as we have existed. Over land. Over resources. Over ideas. Over differences that seem small from the outside, but feel enormous when you are living inside them. We are not peaceful by nature. I will not lie about that." "Then what would you say you are by nature?" Lorith asked. Rena thought for a long moment. "Stubborn," she said. "We care too much. About everything. About each other, about our homes, about people we have never met. And when something threatens the things we care about, we fight. Sometimes that fighting is terrible. Sometimes it is beautiful. How can fighting be beautiful? When a stranger runs into a burning building to save a child they have never met," Rena said. "When a doctor works for 30 hours straight to keep one patient alive. 100,000 people send food and medicine to a place they will never visit because they saw suffering on a screen and could not look away. That is fighting too. Fighting against death. Fighting against suffering. Fighting against giving up." Lorith stared at her. The room was completely silent. "You are describing compassion," Lorith said. "I am describing humans," Rena replied. Lorith set down her stylus. She leaned back in her chair and regarded Rena with an expression that was impossible to read. "You understand my concern," Lorith said. "A species with your physical capabilities, your population, and your history of violence, now capable of spaceflight. The Union Council will see this as a threat." "I understand," Rena said. "What would you tell them if you could?" Rena was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "I would tell them that we are dangerous. I will not pretend otherwise. But danger is not the same as evil. A river is dangerous. A storm is dangerous. They're not trying to hurt you. They simply are what they are. Humans are what we are. We did not choose to be born on a death world. We did not choose to be strong or stubborn or emotional. But we did choose, over and over across our entire history, to build instead of destroy. Not always. Not perfectly. But enough. Enough to still be here." Laura said nothing for a very long time. When the interview ended, Lorith returned to her shuttle and opened a secure channel to the Union Council. Her report was not brief. She spoke for over an hour. She described Rena's biology, her history, her honesty, and her complete lack of deception. At the end, she said something that would be debated in union halls for years. "Humans are not a threat to be contained. They are a force to be understood. They evolved on a world that should have killed them 1,000 times over, and they responded by becoming the most resilient, most emotional, and most dangerously compassionate species I have ever encountered. We could try to ignore them. We could try to quarantine their planet forever. But they built a ship and found us anyway. The question is no longer whether we will meet them. The question is what kind of neighbors we choose to be when we do." The council listened in silence. The vote took 4 days. 4 days of arguments, debates, and closed-door meetings between representatives of over 200 species. 4 days of fear fighting against curiosity. 4 days of Rena sitting quietly on the gentle passage, waiting while an entire galaxy decided what to do about her and every other human being alive. Duel kept her updated when he could. The council was split. One faction wanted to reinforce the quarantine around Earth's system with military patrols. Seal them in. Pretend the probe data was wrong. Pretend Rena had never been found. The other faction argued that it was already too late for that. Humans had built a ship. One of them had already reached Union space. What would follow? The only real choice was whether to meet them on friendly terms or wait until they arrived on their own. On the morning of the 5th day, the vote came in. It was narrow. 12 votes separated the two sides. But it was enough. The Galactic Union would authorize first contact with Earth. Lorith delivered the news to Rena personally. She stood in the medical bay with her green scales gleaming under the lights and her golden eyes as unreadable as ever. The Council has voted, Lorith said. We will send a diplomatic vessel to your system. We would like you to accompany us as a liaison, a bridge between our people and yours. Rena listened carefully. She did not celebrate. She did not smile. She looked at Lorith for a long moment and then said, I will do it, but I have one condition. Lorith's irises rose slightly. A condition. When you approach Earth, you must be honest. Tell them who you are. Tell them why you are coming. Do not hide your intentions. Do not manage the situation. Do not send polite lies wrapped in diplomatic language. Why not? Lorith asked. Because humans can tell, Rena said simply. We are not perfect at it, but we have spent our entire existence reading each other. Body language, tone of voice, the gap between what someone says and what they mean. We evolved surrounded by predators, ambassador. We learned very early to know when something was being honest with us and when it was not. And if we are not honest. Rena's expression did not change, but something behind her eyes grew very still. Then it will go badly. Not because we are violent, because we will not trust you. And humans without trust are humans who prepare for the worst. You do not want that. Lorith considered this for a long time. Then she nodded once. Honesty, she said. You have my word. The diplomatic vessel arrived 2 days later. It was large and white and smooth, built for comfort and ceremony. Rena's escape pod could have fit inside its cargo bay 50 times over. The crew of the Gentle Passage lined the corridors as Rena walked toward the docking port. Some of them pressed against the walls out of old habit, but others stood straight. A few nodded to her as she passed. The young Uni technician she had helped with the equipment case was standing near the airlock. He looked up at her with his enormous dark eyes and said, very quietly, good luck. Rena stopped. She knelt down to his level, the way she always did with shorter species, and said, thank you. Take care of yourself. He nodded quickly, his eyes shining. Poyu was waiting at the airlock. The surgeon delegate had not slept well in days. She stood with all 4 arms clasped in front of her, and for the first time since Rena had met her, she looked uncertain. I want to tell you something, Poyu said. Go ahead. When I first saw your scan results, I was afraid of you. Everything about your biology told me you were the most dangerous patient I had ever treated. Your bones, your muscles, your immune system, all of it said predator. All of it said threat. Rena waited, but then you woke up and said hello. And you were kind. Every single day, you were kind. You carried things for people who were afraid of you. You opened doors with hands that could crush metal. You sat in a room full of strangers who looked at you like a monster, and you never once gave them a reason to be right. Poyu's voice cracked slightly. I wanted you to know that. I'm not afraid of you anymore. I do not think I will ever be afraid of a human again. Rena reached out and took one of Poyu's 4 hands in both of hers. She held it gently, so gently, the way someone holds something precious. Thank you, Poyu, she said, for everything. Poyu squeezed her hand back. It was the bravest thing she had ever done. Rena stepped through the airlock and into the diplomatic vessel. It was clean and quiet and filled with aliens who watched her with a mix of wonder and worry. She nodded to each of them as she passed and made her way to the observation deck at the front of the ship. The vessel pulled away from the Gentle Passage and turned toward the outer rim. The stars shifted slowly as the ship aligned its course. Somewhere ahead, past 100 light-years of empty space, a small yellow star was burning. Around it, a blue and green planet was spinning the same way it had been spinning for 4.5 billion years. A planet of storms and earthquakes and oceans full of teeth. A planet of fire and ice and relentless, stubborn, beautiful life. Home. Rena stood at the window and watched the stars slide past. Behind her, the galaxy was waking up to the idea that the most terrifying world in their records had produced something they never expected. Not a weapon. Not a monster, but a neighbor. And she was bringing them home to meet the family.